You asked me to talk about being a whole person and being a lawyer. I have so many thoughts on that. I remember one of my mentors. I remember being struggling in my 20s about being a lawyer. One of my mentors at the time said, "Who would you have been if you'd never gone to law school?" And I had no answer. As I said, I can't imagine not having gone to law school. Even though I wasn't practicing law at the time, my identity was still wrapped up in being a lawyer. And that question has haunted me all my life since then. I've thought about that off and on, because I've always thought, if you can't answer that question, you don't have an identity beyond being a lawyer. So it's a good question to ask yourself. Who would I have been? Who would I be if I had never gone to law school? And it sort of set me on a quest of, maybe it would be a good idea if I could find who I am outside of being a lawyer. Because if I don't have anything in me other than being a lawyer, that's pretty scary. And that means I don't know who I am. It means I don't know who I was before I went to law school. And that's not comforting at all. It wasn't comforting for me. So I think I've been able to answer that question in my own right-brained kind of way. I couldn't give you the 7 points to Susan and who I am, but maybe if I had enough time I could. But the other question that I answered, that I was posed around that same time in my 20s, when I was going back to school for clinical psychology and I was looking at the legal profession, is, what do I believe in? And somebody asked me, what do you believe in so strongly that you would die for those beliefs? And I said, nothing at the time. There's nothing I believe in that strongly. And I didn't like my answer, because I thought, it's not a good idea to not have anything that you believe in, to not stand for anything. And a little bit later I came on that quote that if you don't stand for something, you'll fall for anything. And that bothered me. And I thought, you better start figuring out what you stand for, or better start figuring out what you care about, what you really value, what you really believe in, because you need to have that. I don't think that it was true at the time that I didn't have things I believed in. I just couldn't articulate them, and I didn't know what they were, and I wasn't sure. I couldn't identify them. So in making a very conscious quest for those things and saying, what is it that I care about? What is it that I believe in? Who am I? What's really important to me? Not, here's this persona of being a lawyer and everything I learned in law school and what everything law school told me is important and this is what's valuable. But what do I care about regardless of the legal profession, what the legal profession thinks? Has been a really useful journey and a really useful exercise. And I think that's probably consciously or unconsciously why my book's called Lawyer Know Thyself, because it certainly reflects what I've been doing since then in the last 20 years. So one of the things I discovered is that even though I was a math major when I was in undergrad, and math is a right-brained activity for the most part, as is art and music. And so in that time, in my 20s, when I was asking those questions, I started doing a lot of painting, and people were laughing at me saying, what are you doing painting? I mean, what are you going to do with that, And I said, well, I don't know, I'm just painting. And I had always been involved in music, but I never really thought that it was important to have it be a big part of my life. And I didn't really meld these two things together until a few years ago, when I had always done a lot of singing, but I didn't really make it a really big part of my life. And recently I've realized that, I can see this common thread throughout my whole life of this right-brained activity, math, music, art, spatial relationships. It's been a really common thread for me. And so finally I just said to myself, you know what, this is really important to me. I'm this kind of person. I need an outlet. I have a very left-brain job. I love left-brained activity. I love writing. I love reading. I love all that stuff. What I do with it is kind of right-brained. I like to synthesize stuff, and I like to see the big picture, and I like to put things in spatial relationships to each other. I like to create flow charts and visuals and charts and all that sort of thing. But and I get a lot of value, intrinsic value in my work from doing all that. But I still need an outlet that's just completely right-brained, and an outlet for me where I'm just in the flow. So there's a psychologist that talks about the experience of flow. And flow is that experience when you're doing something and you lose all track of time, and you're just in the moment, and you just are enjoying what you're doing so much that you it's almost like you're doing what you were born to do. You're using all of your, firing on all pistons. You're using all the talents that you were born with and all the qualities that you were given, and you're doing exactly what you were designed to do. And I experience that, and I kind of demand to experience that. Somewhere in my job, I want to experience that feeling. And somewhere in my personal life, I want to experience that feeling. So, you know, that to me is intrinsically satisfying. And it's different for everybody. So what I experience as flow, what I experience as intrinsically satisfying, may not be what you experience or somebody else experiences. It may be the courtroom for them. It might be sitting with a client. It might be, you know, doing that. It might be writing a brief. It might be just wonderfully satisfying to stay up till 3 in the morning writing a brief. Who knows what it is that someone's going to find exciting, you know. Not so much exciting, but that experience of flow, of just satisfaction, you know. And I mean, I love teaching. It's one of the things I really love doing. I love talking, obviously, you know. And I love putting ideas together in juxtaposition, and then figuring out a way to communicate those ideas to other people so that they understand them and they can say, oh, I see what you're talking about. That is just heavenly to me, to do those things. I enjoy that, and I probably would do them if I wasn't paid for them. And so so recently I started looking at, what do I care about? And I thought, in my music, which I've been doing lately, I play in a couple of different bands, and really enjoy that. And finally admitted to myself, you know, I really like music, I really like art. This is something I'm going to have in my life. I'm just going to do it. I'm not going to apologize for it. I'm just going to, you know, let myself have this. And so I really have been doing that in the last few years. It's been great. So I've been, and it's a little hard to balance sometimes, all the time demands, but you know, on the weekends that I don't have my kids, I play music and write some, and play bass and play guitar, and compose a little bit on the keyboard and mess around with all that stuff. I really enjoy it, you know. And I like to make a difference in people's lives and feel like I've helped people, or I've done something positive, or been a positive influence. So I can see those common themes in everything that I do, and when I have those common themes in everything that I do, I'm really happy and I really enjoy what I'm doing. And if those themes are not present, then it doesn't work very well for me. So, and what's intrinsically satisfying for me, like I said, is not going to be for other people. So I think people can sit down and just look at what you enjoy in your life and pick out the stuff and say, this is what I want. This is what I want in my law practice. This is what I want in my law firm. This is what I want when I work with my clients. This is what I want at home. This is how, you know, you can just say, this is what I want my life to look like. This is what I enjoy doing. And I think, you know, I was born to do certain things and born not to do some other certain things. And finding out those things and doing the things that I'm built to do is where that's where all the joy is. So that's you know, I've read a lot about balance, work-life balance, and stress management, and I sort of chafed at all of that stuff that I read, especially in the 80s and the 90s. I'd read that stuff and I'd be in my firm and I'd think, you know, I just can't see myself working in an environment where I don't feel like I'm utilizing my talents and the things I was built to do, and then 4 hours out of the week I'm going to go do something over here that's going to be a counterbalance to this that I don't enjoy. It doesn't make any sense to me. I'm not willing to do that kind of balance. What I want is to have a job that's fulfilling. You know, it doesn't have to be 100% fulfilling. I mean, it doesn't have to be 100% of the time. Doesn't have to be joyful and wonderful and great. I mean, there's going to be bread and butter, right? There's going to be a bunch of stuff I have to do when I get to do this really great stuff. But I want to have some of my job be really great stuff, and I think everybody can have that. And you know, and then the stuff I do, you know, outside my job, it should be a seamless web. The person I am outside of work, and the person I am at work, I would hope that there is an integration of those people. And I don't want to try to be two different people. Now, I don't know that I'm there. I mean, my students will probably say, she's not there. She hasn't achieved it yet. But, you know, it's a goal at least. Because I heard somebody else say that, you know, in my 30s somewhere, I heard somebody say, I'm the same person everywhere I go. My life is a seamless web. And I thought, there's an ideal that's worth working towards. Being the same, having the same values, same persona, same, you know, everywhere I go.